Okay, so guys, this is future me, and I'm posting this because I have recently realized that some people may not like how I'm posting one chapter per video because how I personally like to listen to is that just open it and let it play, and I don't usually look at it while listening to it, and I don't want to bother changing videos every now and then. So what I'm gonna do is I'm not going to post every day. I'm going to post 2-3 days apart, and I'm going to post 4 or 5 chapters of Shadow Slave together, and 3-4 chapters of LOTM together. But this Shadow Slave video is going to be a bit long because I have 6 chapters, and I'm going to post either 3 or all 6 together. So let's see what's going to happen. But because I have thought about it later, so I have to do a bit of editing, cutting multiple intros out, and I have different outfits in different videos, so please bear with me this time, and next time I will post good content for you guys. Thank you for watching, and please bear with me for these changes. Thank you. Welcome back, guys, to another video of Shadow Slave. Guilty 3 took a week off, then started uploading new chapters, and a friend of mine in Discord told me that Guilty 3 has said that he will only upload one chapter per day from now on. So I liked how he uploaded more chapters per day, as I had more peak content to read. But I guess he also has his life, writing, uploading multiple chapters every day is not that feasible. One chapter a day is still more than I could ask for. So let's start reading. This is, I think, last was the volume 11 ended. This is the volume 12th. We don't know the name of. You could guess the name in the comment section. Before we start reading, make sure to subscribe the channel so that you could see more of the content that I post, and like the video if you like the video, and share it with your friends who have similar interest. Without further ado, oh shit, wait, let me correct it on the screen. We are reading 3001. Without further ado, let's start reading chapter 3001, The Apocalypse. It's recording, okay. The world had moved on, and it was still in motion. The world was rolling down a steep slope. It moved slowly at first, but as the wheels of history gained momentum, things changed. Time seemed to flow faster and faster, endlessly accelerating. Did we have a time skip or time jump? I don't know. By now, it felt like the world was barreling forward at a frightening speed, impossible to slow down and out of control. Not even those who ruled it could stop the inevitable. All they could do was try to steer the world in the least damaging direction, hoping that something would change before it reached the end of the road. Before it fell into the bottomless abyss that waited at the end of the slope. Change and hope. In the face of apocalypse, the two became synonymous, shining a light upon the dark expanse of the ominous future. A year had passed since the dream-spawn plague had been purged from the world. 57 years had come and gone since the nightmare spell descended upon the world, and the end was closer than ever before. The dream realm was said to have begun consuming Earth, and even if people could not observe the destruction of their world yet, they could already feel the consequences. Man, a year of timescale. I'm excited to see the interactions between our main cohort and the Dreamer army. That, by the way, that still feels so insane that Cassie just resurrected them from the dead permanently. will be they will what the fuck is wrong with my English? Are let me articulate my thoughts. Will they be able to reach? Will they be able to reach higher ranks because they are dormant? They need to fight the citadel and go to waking world to become awakened, and if their body in the waking world is dead, then they can't do that. So let's see what's going to happen. Beyond that, humanity was recovering from a devastating loss. Years of memories were gone, plunging countless people into confusion and uncertainty. The shock of this collective amnesia was hard to describe with words, let alone cope with. Needless to say, myriad problems and conflicts had emerged as a result. For example, on a bright day soon after the disaster, a woman named Beth had glanced at a stack of papers handed to her with a dazed expression. Her hair gathered in a messy bun, her eyes bloodshot from the lack of sleep. She rubbed her face. So you're telling me that I successfully reinvented electricity, built a hydroelectric power station in the dream realm, lit the entire bastion. Yes, you should recognize your own handwriting, no? These are your own notes documenting the entire process. Beth glanced at the brilliant man who had handed her the papers. The infamously dreamy Master Quentin. Dreamy. Right, and you are also claiming that we are lovers now. He nodded silently, then smiled. Beth sighed deeply and glanced away to hide her blushing cheeks. Damn. No, but go me, I guess. Or, or in a different part of Dreamland, a weakened Yutra was nursing a toddler while his wife was staring at them with glistening eyes. He's ours, our son. Yutra chuckled. Naturally, who else would he be? Just look at that nose. That's your nose. He shook his head. Life sure is funny though. I remember having this exact conversation, only it was you insisting that the cute rascal was mine. Conversations like that had happened all over the world. Of course, not all of them were happy. In fact, most of them weren't. Humanity had endured a lot in the years that were gone now. After all, the conquest of new territories in the Dream Realm, the war campaign against the Skinwalker, the partial loss of the Eastern Quadrant, the rise of the King of Nothing, the war between him and the human domain. There were countless gates that had opened in the waking world as well, bringing an ocean of nightmare creatures with them. Many lives had been lost trying to contain the swelling tide of abominations. Sorry. And people had to mourn those losses all over again. No, but no matter how deep the wounds of those who had forgotten were, those few who remained were equally scarred. Seishan, Morgan, Kai, Effie, and the rest of them. They still remembered what the Dream Swan had done to them as well as what he had made them do. And even if the cruelties that had been perpetrated or endured by them were the result of mental manipulation, the memories of experiencing that nightmare were real. But the world was moving on. The world was in motion, and the pressure of the present left humanity no time to wallow in the forgotten past, especially because of what awaited them in the future. The official explanation for the calamity that befell humanity was that a nightmare creature of a high rank had infected the world with a mental hex, and that the memories of mankind had to be cleansed in order to destroy that hex. The sun still rose every morning, and the immortal flame still burned. Changing Star was still ruling humanity from her radiant throne, and if she said that the nightmare creature had been dealt with, that they had to continue living, then that was what they had to do. It was not like people had another choice. An official memorial day was established to honor the forgotten, those whose lives had been swallowed by oblivion. The first Remembrance Day was celebrated in a solemn atmosphere on the first anniversary of the calamity, giving those who had lost something a bitter kind of closure, while those who had gained something precious were reminded to appreciate that they had. The world had changed by the disaster, and it was changing still. The changes were staggering. The dream realm was in throes of a global crisis. The war between human domain and the king of nothing, which had apparently taken place during the forgotten years, had rewritten the geography of both the east and the west. In the east, the devastation of Black Mountains and the resulting floods had disturbed the nightmare creatures populating the surrounding regions. In the west, the River of Tears had changed course, completely reshaping the balance that had existed for thousands of years in its basin. New horrors were emerging from the land that had been hidden in the dark depths of the great river once, while the old ones were forced to abandon their territories to seek new hunting grounds. As a result, the abominations everywhere were migrating, flowing towards the citadel cities. The battle to protect them had become both fiercer and more frequent, while traveling between citadels was more hazardous now. Humanity had been at war to expand its territories and prepare for the arrival of the settlers from the Viking world, but now it was at war to keep its land. The subjugation campaigns had been suspended during the clash between the human domain and the king of nothing, and now they were simply over. The soldiers were desperately needed all across the dreamland simply to hold on to the human controlled regions. The Viking world wasn't faring any better. In fact, it felt like it was swiftly approaching the moment of complete collapse. All across the three remaining quadrants, the frequency and the category of emerging threats were increasing. Hordes of nightmare creatures poured into the desolate wasteland of Earth and congregated towards its megacities, threatening to overwhelm their defenders. Nightmare gates were opening within the cities as well, doubling the difficulty to keep the population safe. But perhaps even worse than the tide of abominations was the damage those gates were dealing to the technological infrastructure of humanity. Even if the nightmare creatures who had emerged from the gates were eliminated, and the gates itself sealed behind a containment dome, the interference of the call still persisted, disrupting all the technical systems in a wide area around it. And with the number of active gates constantly increasing, the area of disruption constantly grew, overlapping with each other and taking entire swaths of cities' infrastructure out of commission. Humanity was resisting that harmful process, of course. The gate negatively affected the most vital hubs were prioritized when sending Awaken to challenge nightmares, and breakthroughs achieved by the scientists working on adapting humans' technology to Dream Realm were swiftly reverse engineering to improve the situation on Earth as well. But it was not enough. The progress was woefully insufficient to contend against the spreading nightmare, and so the waking world was slowly sliding into the state of emergency. The billions of people still populating it were anxious and suffering under immense pressure. Of course, nobody knew if there would be a place for them in the dream realm, since sustaining such an enormous population there was beyond the capacity of the hunger domain at the moment. A tense mood suffers the struggling cities of Earth, but there were positive changes that had happened during and since the forgotten years as well. There were more awakened, ascendant, and saints among humans now than ever before, and more still were emerging every month, as if all of humanity was rallied by the approaching end. There was a new supreme to guard it as well, Song of the Fallen. The trusted aide of Lady Changing Star was rumored to have attained supremacy during the Forgotten Years. She did not build herself a throne and preferred to stay away from the public eye. But people still felt safer knowing that two supreme sovereigns were now watching over them. In that those two sovereigns were companions who shared trust and friendship. as opposed to envy and hostility like the previous ones had. That wasn't all either. In fact, there was a third supreme allied with the human domain, and the identity of that supreme was the most wondrous one of all. It was a woman known as Anke, who was a native of the Dream Realm. She wasn't alone either, ruling over a small nation of people who descended from the survivors of ancient calamities. Those strangers who called themselves the River People had established an alliance with Changing Star and joined humanity in the task of preparing for the apocalypse. While their number was not significant enough to move the scales of history, the foreign knowledge and skills they had brought were a priceless boon. With their help, the initiative to build floating cities in the storm sea, which had stagnated for a while, finally felt moving along, and progressing at incredible speed at that. That alone relieved a great amount of pressure on humanity, which was desperate to bring as many settlers to the Dreamland as possible. It was not an exaggeration to say that the population capacity of human territories in the dire new world was going to increase by a third in the span of a few short years because of the transformation happening to the citadels of the Storm Sea. All thanks to Anke of Weave and the River People. I, I just think that the greatest boon was Anke and the River People and their history and their knowledge, which was I never thought that was possible ever, but it happened. But even more importantly than that, the world had been shaken to the core when the rulers of the hunger domain restored the knowledge of natural awakening on their people. Wow, finally happened. It was too incredible to believe, and yet it was true. The river people were a living testament that the natural awakening was possible, and it turned out Changing Star and the Song of the Fallen had been developing a set of techniques to allow all people to attempt becoming awakened for a while now. Now that now these techniques had finally been perfected and made public, freely available to everyone who wanted to gain power, as opposed to being fervently guarded by those who already possessed it. A natural awakening was less assured than conquering a nightmare, but it was much faster, much safer as well. And even if it was a slow and uncertain process, it gave everyone, not only those chosen by the nightmare spell, a chance to become stronger. All people now had a chance to awaken without risking their lives in the first nightmare, and even if they ultimately failed, the process itself was beneficial to their bodies and souls. Awakened could attempt to become masters without sacrificing countless lives to the second nightmare as well. This news shook the very foundation of everything humans thought they knew. It gave people a sense that they could too survive the apocalypse. But those who already possessed great power knew that everything they had done was not enough to stop the world from falling into the abyss, because all their accomplishments and all their strength were insignificant in the face of the approaching calamity. So they felt far more urgency to grow stronger than those who possessed no strength at all. Nothing ever changes. Sunny sighed. He had desperately chased strength as a young man, but now that he was older and already a demigod, he was still desperately trying to become stronger. Life was far more pleasant now, at least. That's the end of the chapter, or the first chapter of volume 12. That's the end of it, and it was fabulous. It was amazing. And I just had to make a point here that I don't know why, but when I'm reading Shadow Slave, it feels natural to me. Rather than when I'm reading Lord of the Mysteries, I have to, I guess I have to find the flow. I find the flow in the Lord of the Mysteries. How to read that? I think I had found the flow of Shadow Slave, and I guess I can read it very naturally, as opposed to Lord of the Mysteries. I guess I have to read more chapters of Lord of the Mysteries for that to happen. But this was an amazing, amazing, amazing chapter, and it's a fairly long chapter for Shadow Slave. So let's continue without further ado. Life is far more pleasant now, at least, Sunny sighed again. There was a long moment of silence, and then a voice that lacked amusement responded from the darkness. That's great. I'm happy for you. I really am. But can you get out of my room? I am guessing, I don't know, I'm just guessing that it's rain. Sunny grimaced and glanced around with a dubious expression. It's not like he wanted to be here either. I mean, I can, but I won't. I'm afraid of Aiko, you see. So even if hiding in this pigsty pains me, I must insist that I stay. So he's hiding from Aiko. He was naturally in the depths of this dark castle, suffering the sorry sight of Revel's messy room. Sunny was glad. Oh, so he's talking to Revel, man. Is going to tell all his heroic stories to Revel. Cease is going to be very confused after hearing that. Okay, Sunny was graciously tolerating the ignorable state of her personal quarters, and yet his ungrateful minions, that is to say, the vu- vulnerable transcendent elder of his clan, did not appreciate his selfless sacrifice one bit. Instead, she had the audacity to be unhappy about it. Sunny was sitting on a chair he had manifested out of shadows, wisely choosing not to trust the surface around him. Revel, meanwhile, was glancing at him in displeasure from her lavish bed, where she had been lazing around about prior to his arrival. The proud and demonic image of the fearsome light slayer was gone, replaced by a ragged black sweatshirt and a messy bun. The marvelous mimic was back in the dark city, and the Shadow Clan was busier than ever. Not only because most of its members had kept their memories of the plague, which made them indispensable in dealing with its consequences, but also because the Forgotten Shore was at war. The eerie burrows in the north had opened, and a seemingly endless tide of burrow raids was flowing south, threatening to consume his lightless realm. The ancient revenants were both immensely powerful and peculiarly elusive, so the Shadow Legion had been engaged in a furious defensive campaign in the last year. The clash between the primeval abominations and the shadows were especially troubling because of the terrifying powers that the shamans of the undead tribes wielded. And then there were the terrifying chieftains as well, and the unseen being who ruled them all too. Among the powers wielded by the Burrow Raids were the eerie ability to steal the souls of their fallen warriors back, preventing the Shadow Legion from swelling with a torrent of new shades during the campaign. Man, that's. I feel like first G3 portrayed that Sunny's domain is like this strong, and from that point, he's just he's just doing things that makes his domain lose power. And I don't appreciate it. To be frank, I don't appreciate it. Why is he downgrading Sunny's domain? In short, the Dark Lord of the Forgotten Shore was quite busy. My top lieutenant is supposed to be busier though. Why is he even loitering here instead of doing something productive? The gal. If anything, I should be the one telling her to get out of the room. Sunny scoffed and gave Revel a look of reproach. She let out a heavy sigh, hugged the pillow, and leaned back. What is even going on between you and Aiko? She had been looking at you funny as of late. Sunny coughed. Well, how do I put it? She might have remembered that I cost her a job, then hired her to be my assistant, then disappeared for a few years, leaving her to salvage a crumbling business in the absence of the main supplier, then appeared out of nowhere, brought the business back from her, made her my assistant again, forced her to work as a waitress for about a year, well, and so on. Revel grimaced as if experiencing a headache. Slow down, I didn't catch half of that. So you and I could go way back. Wait a minute. Sorry for the pause, guys. Had to do important work, and I'm back. So let's continue where we left. Sunny nodded. Oh yes, in fact, it was I who bought and blackmailed her into. I mean, found and convinced her to join Nephis' faction in the Bright Castle. Revel tilted her head a little. The Bright Castle? Since when were you? Oh wait, no. Actually, never. It, but it was already too late. Sunny grinned. Do you want the long version or the short version? All of these are Sunny's victims, fine. That's absurd. Revel groaned quietly. I am guessing that I am not getting you to leave before hearing at least one of those. Sunny smiled. Wow, you are so insightful. I really have the best eye for talent, don't I? She gave him a dark look. What the hell? I am bored. Let's hear the long version. Sunny smiled violent. Listen well, then. A long time ago, a boy was born in the outskirts of NQSC. The moment he was born, a vast shadow obscured the sun, and darkness swallowed the world. Heralding, Rebel waved a hand in the air. Not that long. Get to the point, please. Sunny gave her a sullen, remained silent for a few seconds, then shrugged. Well, anyway, eventually the boy entered the first nightmare, picked some berries, and received the blessing of the Shadow God as a result. Revel frowned. Wait, how does picking berries lead to receiving a divine blessing? Sunny blinked a couple of times. Why? Because the boy murdered three people and an awakened tyrant thanks to those berries. You might not know it, but people from the outskirts and fresh fruit make for a peerless combination. Revel stared at him silently for a moment, never mind. Sunny grinned. The boy also received a divine aspect and a crippling flaw. Then he returned to the waking world and met a radiant princess of a fallen clan. Revel rolled her eyes. Actually, I changed my mind. Let's go with the short version. Sunny fell silent and glanced at her with a hurt expression. Eventually, though, he acquiesced. Fine. Well, you know how the story goes. Boy meets girl, boy falls in love with the girl, boy becomes magically enslaved by the girl, gets left behind when she sacrifices herself to save his life, vows to become stronger than her, finds her after years of separation, gets into a huge fight with her, storms out to a different continent to join a suicidal war. Ravel's expression turned progressively more incredulously, whatever that means. Sunny did not mind though. Boy gets reunited with the girl in the third nightmare, breaks the fate of all existence with the help of a devious blind oracle to free himself of her, gets forgotten by the entire world as a result, loses his mind and wanders the dreamland for a few years, slaughtering all kinds of nightmare creatures, regains his senses and meets the girl again, sighs, signs a contract to be the fake lover of the girl, conspires with her to conquer the world, kills himself, kills the sovereigns, pretends to be killed by her, kills a mad bird to become her magical slave again, gets robbed blind by that dead bird. Sunny sighed. You know, it's the usual. It's so fucking funny, man. Revel exhaled slowly and rubbed her temple. Okay, I will need to hear a longer version after all, but not that too long. How about a medium version? A between version? Can you do that? Sunny beamed. Why naturally? So, where was I? He scratched his chin with a thoughtful expression and said, anyways, Nefes and I got to know each other on the Forgotten Sword. At first, he thought that I was an assassin sent by the Great Clans to kill her. Well, I thought she was a mad demagogue planning a mass slaughter. Rebel nodded. Oh, enemies to lovers. Great stuff. Sunny glanced at her in confusion before continuing. But despite that, the two of us quite liked each other. It was just that Cassie had received a prophetic vision showing that the two of us were destined to fight each other to the death. So, knowledge of what the future held stood between us. Ravel was staring at him intently now. No, star-crossed lovers. Even better. Sunny frowned. So, anyway, I was saying. Nefis was playing the role of an enlightened savior, and everyone was dancing to her tune except for me. I was the only one who told it to her like it was, and as a result, wait. But Travel interrupted him. Wait. She studied him with a look of concentration, then mumbled. Why does it make sense though? Changing Star is a reserved young woman suppressing her feelings, then you appear and blow up her whole stoic routine with your nonsense. The roles are reversed, but aren't you a picture perfect manic pixie dream boy? What the fuck is that? Then I like it. Sunny stared at her with a baffled expression. A manic pixie? A what? What the hell are you talking about? Revel shook her head. Don't think about it, you can continue. Then she raised an eyebrow. Wait, but what about Harley Caster? In the song of the Light and Darkness, the two of them were clearly. Sunny scoffed. What do you believe everything do you see on the screen? That guy was the real assassin sent by the Great Clans to kill her. Actually, shouldn't you know Lady's song? Ravel's eyes suddenly glittered in the darkness. Oh, it was a doomed love triangle. Sunny almost fell out of his chair. Almost fell out of his chair out of pure outrage. What? No, there weren't any triangles. Okay, none. Sunny Ravel gave him a doubtful look. Sure. Sunny gritted his teeth. I told you there weren't, didn't I? She glanced at him with a deadpan expression. And I told you, sure, didn't I? He glared at her for a short while, then scoffed and glanced away. Well, anyways, the forgotten show was a bit rough on us sleepers. By the end of it all, I had killed around 400 awakened abominations, and a few fallen ones as well, and a great devil. All of that despite being a mere dormant beast. I also lived in the dark city alone for a while, alone with my friends. I mean, a shadow and a talking rock, and a mute statue. Those were great times. I only kept my sanity because of them. Ravel's expression turned peculiar for some reason. Ignoring that, Sunny continued his story, eventually reaching the siege of the Crimson Spire and that fateful duel at its pinnacle. But actually, Nephis pretended to lose. All of it was a ploy to get me to leave. She wanted to sacrifice herself to save me. He heard a peculiar sound and glanced at Rebel with wide eyes. Hey, did you just squeal? She glanced at him chillingly and said in a somber tone, I did not. Sunny hesitated, but I clearly heard. You were mistaken. Are you sure? I am a supreme, after all, so my hearing is pretty great. Oh, is it? How come you didn't hear me telling you to get the hell out of my room then? Oh, what the fuck? I did hear. I heard it perfectly well. I just chose to ignore it. I wonder where Aiko is. Maybe I should invite her here to help me check her hearing. Check your hearing. Anyways, back to the story. Sunny continued to recount various events from his life. By then, Rebel produced a bottle of spirit wine and two crystal glasses, as well as some earth snacks and strips of dried monster meat. The head of the Shadow Clan and his field commander got pretty serious about playing hooky after that. I took a bad tumble and spent a few weeks falling into the bottomless abyss of the endless darkness. Then the darkness spoke to me, and do you know what it said? It said, why is it so dark? I kid not, those were its first words. And then he cut my head clean off. Being beheaded, it's not fun, let me tell you. But anyway, I put my head back on and killed him. No, wait, it was the other way around. I killed him first, then put my head back on after that. So there I was, thinking that we were both going to die, looking into her eyes while she glanced into mine. Time seemed to slow down, and then she took a deep breath, gathered her courage, and finally admitted it. It was me who broke your projector. She said, "The projector! The projector!" Can you believe that, woman? You know, nothing is more romantic than spending a month drifting together on the corpse of a great monster. Ravel's reaction, meanwhile, were quite monotone. Wait, you are mongrel? Wait, you are the devil of Antarctica? Wait, that is where you draw the line, really? Honey? Sunny frowned. What was she on about? Naturally, only a complete lunatic would like honey. He was not the most sane person, but eating insect vomit was too much even for him. Rich people. Sunny hates honey. Eventually, Sunny got to the end of the tail, and that was how everyone remembered me. So here you go. That is why I am heading from Aiko. Revel stared at him with a complicated expression. That's peculiar. Sunny raised an eyebrow. What? Revel shook her head. If everyone remembers you now, how come I don't? He blinked a few times. Isn't that obvious? It's because we had never met before I became the Lord of Shadows. He paused for a moment and then offered helpfully. Because you are an antisocial shut-in who never goes out. Revel glanced at him. Is it? Or is it because you were too unremarkable and insignificant to meet me? Sunny scoffed. I met Seshan, didn't I? And Morgan. And Mordred too. Naive from the House of Night. Actually, I met Beastmaster as well. She called me little brother. So it's just you. Way to go, recluse. Revel nodded. I see, I see. Then Song of the Fallen must have made a mess out of your head at some point. Do you expect me to believe all that nonsense? Sunny opened his mouth to retort, but at that moment someone knocked on the door. He froze, his Polcasian face turning even paler than usual. Oh no, a pleasant voice resounded from outside. Hey boss, are you there? Don't answer, I already know that you are. His eyes widened, his voice shook as he whispered. She found me. And that's the end, guys. That's the end. And started with this chapter. I'm very, very excited. And I'm reading as soon as it got released. So let's get started. Sunny felt a chill running down his spine when he imagined Aiko barging into Revel's chambers and finding him there. Luckily, that did not happen because Revel unceremoniously pushed him out into the corridor, slamming the door behind him with a resounding bang. So he was caught in the corridor instead. Damnation. Sunny regained his balance and slowly looked up. Aiko was there floating around a meter above the floor, looking down at him and smiling sweetly. Hey, boss, Sunny sighed. It was really unfair, considering Aiko's petty stature. He wasn't supposed to have to crank his neck to look at her, and yet he had developed a bad habit of looming over. And yet she had developed a bad habit of looming over him as of late, which made him miss the good old days of inhabiting the body of a 3 meter tall shadow spawn in the second nightmare. Oh yeah, hey boss. A low voice resounded from behind Aiko, making Sunny sigh once more and look even higher. The reason why the resident shadow fairy was floating high above the floor these days was standing behind her, staring at Sunny with a guarded expression. It was a giant of a man. Is it Steve, the memory merchant? No, a mountain of a man whose prodigy's height could only be compared to his imposing width. It was Steve, the sleeper who had been in charge of the memory arsenal of the Bright Castle once serving Gunlong. I knew it, man. My boy Steve is back. The same Steve who had been killed during the siege of the Crimson Spire. Seeing him out and about unmistakably alive was just as weird for Sunny as seeing Sunny rule the Forgotten Shore must have been for Steve. Is he really alive though? And was Steve really Steve? Cassie's supreme was truly mysterious, bordering on ineffable, even emanating a subtle scent of divinity. Summoning things he remembered into reality could only be described as miraculous. And those things weren't simply manifestations of mental images stored in her memory. They weren't illusions or cheap phantoms. Once summoned, they were real. Take the giant man in front of Sunny, for example. He was not merely a facsimile acting out the role of a person who had been Steve, no different from an echo. Instead, he had a sense of self, carried the memories of the true Steve, and had as much free will as any other human. He also possessed a soul, a true shadow, could command his aspect, and was recognized by the spell as one of its carriers. If there was one difference between ordinary living beings and those manifested by Cassie, it was that the latter simply vanished after being destroyed, leaving no trace of themselves in the world, not even their shades. Apart from that, although they were ostensibly real, which did not mean that they were the original. But if they were a flawless copy of the original, then was there really a difference? Hell if I know. Where was I lost my place. Hell if I know. Sunny did not know if that mattered either. What mattered was that all the sleepers Cassie had met in the Dark City, more than 1,000 of them, were alive once again. Granted, they weren't sleepers anymore. Soon after Cassie summoned them back to the world of the living from beyond the grave, they all tethered themselves to various citadels in the dream realm and became awakened. In fact, a few were already masters, having conquered the second nightmare soon after returning from beyond. With that, Cassie had mostly exhausted the limits of her supreme ability. She could not manifest any more supreme beings since the spot was already taken by herself. The dreamers of the Dark City accounted for all the dormant and awakened memories she could summon, constantly drawing on her essence at the same rate as it was replenished. She could still call upon a small number of transcendent items of beings, and as for ascendant, according to Cassie, she could indefinitely sustain the manifestation of 49 masters. Only a handful of people she had summoned ascended so far, so there was still plenty of room for others to grow. Seven of them could become saints without overwhelming her aspect. And by the time more of the former dreamers of the Dark City were ready to challenge the second or third nightmare, her domain would have grown stronger, granting her more spirit essence and therefore greater capacity to manifest living beings of all ranks. That was the plan, at least. Sunny stared at Steve darkly, prompting the giant man to shift in discomfort. What? Why are you looking at me like this, boss? Sunny remained silent for a short while, then shook his head. It's because my feelings are hurt. He threw his hand into the air. All the trouble I went to, collecting every single bone, building a gorgeous grave for you guys. I even wrote such a beautiful, pungent epithet. Epithet. What the fuck is that? How do you think I feel now that you are walking around? Bizarrely alive. All my efforts were wasted. Steve coughed awkwardly. Well, thank you for your efforts. He paused for a moment before adding politely, I am sure that it is a very nice grave. I should really visit sometimes. Sunny waved a hand. Oh, forget it. His tone was disheartened. Cassie gave the people she had brought back from the dead free choice of what to do with their lives. They were not beholden to her or to anyone really, so they could do whatever they wished. Not that coming back to life after a decade of being dead was an easy thing, especially since many of them had spent years lost on the forgotten shore before dying in the shadow of the Crimson Spire. The world had changed in their absence. In fact, it was almost unrecognizable now. The world was ending for one, and the woman who had led them into the final battle or war, responsible for their deaths prior to that, ruled it. Some of the dreamers of the Dark City, like Gunlung, had gone missing more than 20 years ago, The people whom they had known were now gone or unfamiliar. Some were welcomed back, some found their old homes empty and destroyed. Like what the fuck? Castor is back. Like Castor, the heir of the Hanley clan was back, but the Hanley clan itself did not exist anymore. Seeing him again had felt very strange for Sunny, especially because Castor was still a teenager, while Sunny himself was now 29. What the fuck? It's so much of a difference. The only thing stranger was to see Harper, the young man whom Sunny had killed once, get reunited with his family. Cassie said that she had chosen to bring the dreamers of the Dark City back because of their potential, but from what Sunny knew, Harper and a few others like him were not in a hurry to realize that potential. In fact, they never wanted to experience anything like the violence and bloodshed they had experienced on the Forgotten Shore ever again. Most of the former dreamers, though, were quite motivated. They had scattered in every direction, quickly making names for themselves. Gunlong was in the storm sea now, helping the river people build floating cities. Castor was retained by a legacy clan ruling one of the citadel cities in the basin of the River of Tears. Gemma and Kaido were in Ravenheart. The latter were working under Saint Bliss to hasten the agricultural development of the Dream Realm. Dozens of the former handmaidens joined Seishan and their sisters in Ravenheart as well. More than a few of the people Cassie had brought back to life stayed behind to serve her as her personal assistants. But most of them joined the Firekeepers. It was ironic, really. The original Firekeepers, those of them who had survived Godgrave, were all gone now, having split into six cohorts to challenge six nightmare seeds and become saints. What the hell? Six cohorts with at least five people, I think 30 more saints. The awakened who had been recruited by the firekeepers after the war, meanwhile, had all forgotten, becoming members of Changing Star's personal guard. So the veterans of the Forgotten Shore Cassie had manifested were like the second generation of the firekeepers, taking the place of their former comrades while the first generation was away. Sunny gave Steve a long look. None of them was as crazy as this guy, though, who had gone right back to Forgotten Shore and was now a member of the Shadow Clan, working under Aiko in the Dark Castle. Sunny shook his head. What a lunatic. Why was he constantly surrounded by crazy people? Well, anyway, what do you want, Aiko? I was very busy, but busy destroying River's supply of junk food. Aiko stared at Sunny for a long while, making him feel unnerved, and then he suddenly found himself in a tight embrace. I love you, boss. Sunny's blood turned cold. His hair stood on end. What? What? What are you planning? He looked down, and at the exact same moment, Aiko looked up, glancing him with a brilliant smile. I really do. Today is the Remembrance Day, is it not? So I just wanted to thank you. Frozen by fear, Sunny nodded slowly. Yes, it is. So what? Was he seeing things, or were her eyes glistening with tears? No, they really were. Aiko's voice trembled. What do you mean, so what, boss? Do you know how beautiful it is to be the only person who remembers every scientific advancement, social? What the fuck? Is he going to monopolize that? Every scientific advancement, social trend, and business development that has happened since the God-Grave War, while all your competitors don't. What the fuck, man? She is going to what the fuck monopolize all that shit, man. The prices are going to skyrocket. She hugged him tighter and beamed. Forget war profiteering, boss. Forget colonialism. I could let out a dreamy sigh. Insider trading, that's the way. Man, I can't, man. I can't. It's so cool. It's so cool. It's so funny as well, man. It's so funny. I wish I in the future I want to see more of the dreamer army perspective, like Gunlong and Castor, especially Castor. Uh, what what is his interaction is going to be with Sunny after Sunny killed him, you know. So it was quite amazing. This chapter was quite amazing. Aiko is always the same at monopolizing, profiting from everything that she can do. Man, that's really that's really funny. So that's it for the chapter. Please consider subscribing the channel, liking the video, and sharing this video to people who like to watch the same content. And I will see you in the next video. Till then, take care. Goodbye.